Two questions. Oh, and good questions at that. Question one. At what point did Mozart, the composer, become more than the sum of his various influences and mentors? Phrased another way, at what point did Mozart become more than an amalgamator and imitator and find his own compositional voice? Question two. At what point did Mozart's music remove itself from the mainstream and enter a place entirely of its own making, a place that many of his contemporary listeners were simply unable to go? I can and I will answer both of these questions, but before I do, I'll tell you up front that my answers are not going to resonate with the Mozart mythology on which we've been force-fed for roughly, the last 250 years. The particular portion of the Mozart mythology to which I refer has its roots in the Mozart family's grand journey, their epic concert tour of Europe between 1763 and 1766, when Wolfgang was between the ages of 7 and 10 years old. The journey saw the miraculous young Mozart perform before amazed, head-shaking, sometimes disbelieving, often drooling audiences in, among other locations, Munich, Mannheim, Mainz, Frankfurt, Cologne, Liège, Brussels, Utrecht, Amsterdam, The Hague, Den Haag as the Dutch pronounce it, Antwerp, Ghent, Lille, Calais, Dover, London, Paris, Dijon, Lyon, Geneva, and Zurich. It was this tour that made Mozart a legend. To this day, he is considered the most famous child prodigy in history. We read about his miraculous abilities at the age of 7 to sight-read virtually anything on a keyboard or a violin, of his ability to play faultlessly on a keyboard covered with a cloth, of the extraordinarily polished and virtuosic manner with which he would improvise on tunes given to him from the audience, and his brilliant renditions of his own compositions. Yes, his own compositions. We shake our heads with disbelief and wonder when we read that Mozart composed his first piece of music, a minuet in G major for harpsichord, when he was but a wee tyke of 5 years of age. That he composed his Symphony No. 1 in E-flat major in 1764 at the age of 8. That he composed his first piano concerto, Kochel 37, in F major, when he was just 11, and composed his first opera, Bastien und Bastienne, in 1768, when he was only 12. We're so busy being bowled over by the prodigious skills of young Mozart that we naturally assume that his youthful efforts as a composer were equal to his abilities as a performer. But in fact, they were not. Mozart's earliest keyboard works are only impressive in light of what he composed later on. In and of themselves, his early efforts are not all that impressive, and certainly not particularly different from other first efforts by countless other young composers, yours truly included. Mozart's first symphony, written while on tour in England, was almost certainly co-authored by Mozart's business partner, agent, valet, and publicist, his father Leopold, who knew darned well that a slick little symphony with themes by his son would wow the locals. And wowed they were. The first and third movements of Mozart's Piano Concerto No. 1 are in fact arrangements of works by other composers, respectively Hermann Friedrich Raupach and Leoncy Honauer. Back, please, to my original questions. At what point did Mozart the composer become more than the sum of his influences and mentors? And at what point did Mozart's music remove itself from the mainstream and enter a place entirely of its own making? While it is true that Mozart found his own musical voice at somewhat different times depending on the genre of composition. I would suggest that, generally speaking, Mozart found that personal compositional voice when he was 21 years old, around the time that he and his mother left Salzburg for Paris. I would further suggest that Mozart's music did not remove itself from the mainstream and enter a place of its own making until 1782, when he was 26, when he began composing the 6-string quartets he eventually dedicated to Joseph Haydn.